Hey there, sleepyheads! Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of adventure time through the eyes of a minor creature, I'd love to know where in the world you are watching from tonight, and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical, seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. Tonight, we enter Ooh not through the eyes of a hero, nor a ruler, nor even one of its famous wizards. Instead, we slow down to notice the smallest of lives. We slip into the quiet days of a candy person, one of those gentle and often overlooked souls who make up the very heartbeat of the Candy Kingdom. For us, the Candy Kingdom is a backdrop, a whimsical place of sweets and bright colors. But for the candy people themselves, it is home. Every sugar brick, every frosting fountain, every candy cobblestone glowing with a familiarity that outsiders might never fully understand. Imagine for a moment that you are one of them. Perhaps a gumdrop, round and soft, with sugar crystals that sparkle faintly in the sunlight. Or maybe a candy cane with a peppermint swirl running down your skin, your steps clicking faintly on the polished caramel streets. Your life is simple, perhaps even fragile, but it is not without wonder. The mornings in the Candy Kingdom begin with the soft hum of life itself. The sweet aroma of warm taffy fills the air as bakers begin their work. The ground beneath your feet feels faintly warm, as though the earth itself carries the gentle heat of sugar being stirred in some eternal cauldron. Children made of gum and jelly laugh as they bounce down the pathways, while older candy folk sit at their windows nodding quietly to neighbors passing by. Above it all, Princess Bubblegum watches. To you, she is more than a ruler. She is the architect of your very existence. You were not born in the way mortals are born. You were crafted, sculpted, and given life through her strange mix of science and care. The knowledge of this fact is both comforting and uneasy. Comforting, because you trust her wisdom and her presence. Uneasy, because deep down, every candy person knows they are as much experiment as individual. But those thoughts rarely linger long. Daily life has its rhythm, and the candy people follow it almost instinctively. In your small candy house, perhaps you sweep sugar dust from the corners. You share a simple breakfast of marshmallow fluff with friends. You walk the markets, where licorice ropes are coiled like bundles of rope, and lollipops glimmer like stained glass under the sun. The world is bright, cheerful, and soft, like living inside a perpetual festival. And yet, beneath the cheer, there is always a subtle awareness that the world is not as safe as it looks. You remember the day the gumball guardians stirred from their slumber. Their enormous, stone-like forms creaked to life, eyes glowing with otherworldly power. From your vantage point on the street, their towering figures blocked out the sky, their deep voices vibrating through the sugar walls of your home. You didn't understand the full reason, but you knew something was wrong. In those moments, you felt small, fragile, and aware that Ooh is filled with powers far greater than your sweet little body could endure. Heroes like Finn and Jake arrive in these times of crisis. From a distance, you have glimpsed them, Finn's bright hat bobbing through the crowd, Jake stretching his limbs to protect the vulnerable. To you, they are larger than life, not friends you could ever sit with, but forces of protection, legends who pass briefly through your world and leave it safer than before. You whisper their names with reverence, as children might whisper about distant stars. Sometimes your quiet routine is interrupted by chaos of another kind, figures like Lemongrab, whose visits send ripples of fear through the candy people. His screeching voice carries through the streets, and even though you hide inside your sugar-scented home, you can still feel the tension in your caramel bones. In his presence, you understand that not all who come from bubblegum science carry the same warmth. But most days are gentler. Most days you live simply. You listen to Peppermint Butler's whispers as he passes by, carrying secrets you cannot begin to fathom. You watch the sky darken as cotton candy clouds roll in at sunset, glowing faintly pink and lavender. In the evenings, you gather with neighbors in small circles, telling stories passed down among candy folk. Tales of the early days of the kingdom, when bubblegum first brought sweetness into a ruined world. You rarely leave the safety of your homeland. Beyond the candy walls lies an ooh that is unpredictable, filled with monsters, kingdoms, and wild magic. For you, life is not about grand adventures, but about tending to the little things, keeping your sugar garden healthy, making sure your frosting roof does not melt in the summer heat, humming songs while the caramel breeze drifts through the streets. And yet, even within this smallness, you carry a quiet kind of wisdom. You have lived long enough to notice patterns. You've seen wars flare up like sudden storms, only to vanish again, leaving the Candy Kingdom changed, but still standing. You've watched children grow and dissolve, then return in new forms as bubblegum rebuilds what is lost. And though you may not understand the wider fate of ooh you hold within you, the sense that your people, though fragile, are strangely enduring. As the night falls in the Candy Kingdom, the air cools and sweetens. The sugar streets glisten under the glow of lanterns filled with syrupy firelight. You tuck yourself inside your cozy home, walls warm and fragrant, and you feel safe for now. Outside, the gumball guardians keep their silent watch. Somewhere in the distance, Finn and Jake may be setting out on another adventure. But for you, the night is gentle, your world small and steady, carrying you softly into dreams. When morning light spills back across the sugar towers, life resumes in familiar patterns. You step outside your little home, brushing bits of powdered sugar from your shoulders, and the world greets you with its candy-colored hum. The streets are busy, but never frantic. Peppermint sticks clack pleasantly as neighbors walk. Marshmallow folks bounce softly with each step, and the scent of baking spreads like a constant lullaby through the kingdom. There is something curious about living in a place where nearly everything is edible. The very walls, the bridges, even the ground beneath you could, in theory, be consumed. And yet, the candy people rarely think of it that way. To you, the frosting bridge across the plaza is not dessert, but home. The gumdrop trees in the park are not a meal, but shelter and shade. The sweetness that defines your world is not temptation, but stability. But you also know this sweetness is fragile. The candy people are soft, prone to melting, crumbling, or dissolving under strain. That is why there is such quiet gratitude for Princess Bubblegum's presence. Though she is often seen hurrying from one laboratory to another, her aura is everywhere. Every candy folk knows deep in their sugary heart that she is the reason they exist. It is an unusual relationship, a ruler who is also a creator. In her shadow, you live not only as a citizen, but as an extension of her will. Some whisper about this, not in unkindness, but in quiet unease. You may have heard neighbors murmur that if bubblegum ever vanished, would the candy people remain? Would the magic of their existence unravel? These thoughts come at night, when the air cools and silence fills the streets. By morning, though, most brush them away, returning to laughter, baking, and play. The most memorable days are when outsiders arrive, the gates of the Candy Kingdom open, and suddenly the streets are filled with strange faces, tree folk, hot dog nights, even adventurers passing through. For a candy person, such days are overwhelming. You stand in your doorway, clutching a cup of liquid caramel, and watch the strangeness unfold. The world outside seems vast and mysterious, and though it frightens you, it also sparks wonder. And then there are the days of true danger. You remember vividly when the Lich's shadow touched the kingdom. The air grew cold, heavy, and wrong, even before you knew what was happening. The normally bright skies seemed dim, and your sugar body ached with an unfamiliar fear. You watched from hiding as Finn and Jake confronted that darkness, their voices firm against the silence. To you, the Lich was not just an enemy. It was the embodiment of something candy people cannot understand: decay, entropy, the undoing of sweetness itself. When the danger passed, your relief was not simply survival, but the renewal of faith that the heroes would always come. But Ooh teaches lessons in cycles. The Candy Kingdom, like all things, is not unchanging. You've seen new buildings rise, candy folk crafted anew, and others crumble with time. The youngest sugar children laugh without memory of the Lich, of Lemon Grab, or of the war with Flame Princess. For them, the kingdom is eternal. For you, with your quiet reflections, you sense that eternity is only an illusion of sweetness, fragile and carefully maintained. And still, life carries on. You help neighbors sweep gum syrup from the streets after a summer rain. You trade with the lollipop merchants, who sing as they arrange their wares in neat, shimmering rows. In the afternoons, children gather at the base of the candy castle, gazing up at the tall walls as if they might glimpse Bubblegum herself. She rarely stops to speak with the small folk, but when she does, her words are remembered for years, retold like scripture. One evening, you hear music. The source is a strange little figure, BMO, sitting on the castle steps, playing a song about friendship, about dancing, about joy. You listen, entranced, realizing that even though you are but one small piece of the kingdom, you are part of something that resonates beyond yourself. The music lingers in your mind long after BMO wanders away, leaving you with a warmth that feels deeper than sugar. Nights in the kingdom always carry their own quiet beauty. Lanterns shaped like glowing gumdrops line the streets, their colors shifting gently from pink to orange to green. The air cools, and the scents of the day, baked pies, caramel, roasted marshmallows, fade into a sweetness that seems timeless. You walk slowly along the path, feeling the cobblestones under your soft candy feet, and you sense that while you may not be a hero, your world still holds meaning. As you prepare for rest, you think of how your story, though small, fits within a much greater one. Finn and Jake's adventures will be remembered across kingdoms, sung by bards and whispered in faraway lands. But your life, too, is part of Ooh. You are a witness, a memory keeper, a small voice in the chorus of the world. And sometimes that is enough. When you pause to think about it, the life of a candy person is a kind of dream in itself. You move through days filled with sweetness, laughter, and color, and yet beneath it, there is an undeniable fragility, like spun sugar balanced on the edge of melting. Perhaps that is why your kind lives so fully in the moment. Tomorrow might bring danger, or it might bring another festival. Either way, your soft little body will bend to the rhythm, carried along by the sweetness of the kingdom. On special days, Princess Bubblegum organizes gatherings in the great plaza. You remember standing shoulder to shoulder with your neighbors, all of you gazing up as she gave her speeches. Her voice, clear and calm, echoed against the candy towers, filling you with a sense of purpose, even if you did not understand every detail of her science or her politics. To a candy person, words from Bubblegum carry more than meaning. They carry assurance. If she says you will be safe, then you breathe easier. If she warns of danger, you clutch your friends tightly, knowing she will find a way to protect you. Sometimes you think about her in the quiet hours. She has lived far longer than you, and she carries knowledge that seems endless. You know she is not truly immortal, yet to you she feels untouchable, like a pillar of caramel that never crumbles. And yet you wonder, what does it mean that she is both ruler and creator? If you are her subject but also her invention, what does that make your life? Do you live for yourself, or are you simply part of her grand design? These thoughts drift like sugar threads, light and uncertain, and often dissolve before you can follow them too far. The Candy Kingdom, after all, does not encourage worry. It encourages celebration. Festivals happen often, whether in honor of a successful harvest of gumdrop trees or simply to mark the turning of a season. During these times, the streets are lined with banners of frosting, and tables stretch across the plaza, heavy with pies, tarts, and rivers of liquid chocolate. You join in the dancing, your soft feet tapping lightly against the cobblestones, your laughter blending with the music. These moments remind you that even if the world beyond your walls is strange and dangerous, here within, life can be gentle. Still, dangers have a way of seeping in. You recall the time when Flame Princess's fire clashed with Princess Bubblegum's science. From afar, you saw the flames licking the horizon, felt the air grow hotter, your sugary skin softening uneasily. For a moment, you feared the entire kingdom would melt away. And yet once again, Finn and Jake were there, standing at the heart of it, their choices shaping the peace that followed. You never spoke to them, never thanked them directly, but you whispered gratitude in your heart, as all candy people do. Then there are the stranger nights. Nights when Peppermint Butler lingers too long in the shadows, murmuring words in languages you do not understand. You pretend not to notice, for candy people prefer to look away from what frightens them. And yet you know, deep down, that his secrets help guard the kingdom in ways you cannot see. For every battle fought in the daylight, there are quieter struggles unfolding beneath the sugar surface, and perhaps it is better that you do not know them fully. Life continues in its rhythm, and your memories begin to weave together like threads of caramel. You think of your childhood, when the walls of the kingdom seemed impossibly tall and the world outside unimaginable. You think of the first time you glimpsed the Ice King drifting overhead on his frosty winds, his blue figure casting long shadows across the candy streets. You remember shivering, though not from cold. To you, he was like a storm given shape, unpredictable and strange. And yet, as the years passed, you came to realize he was more lonely than fearsome, more lost than truly cruel. As a candy person, you see these figures not as individuals with backstories and destinies, but as forces that brush against your world. Finn is hope. Jake is comfort. The Lich is terror. Bubblegum is creation. Ice King is sorrow drifting on the wind. To you, they are not people so much as symbols written across the canvas of your small life. And in your quiet way, you honor them, even if you do not understand the fullness of their stories. And so the years pass, filled with cycles of joy and fear, of safety and threat. You find love, perhaps, and with another candy soul, sharing days of laughter and nights of whispered dreams. Or you remain solitary, your family being the neighbors and friends who share your street. In either case, your life is not marked by grand adventures, but by patterns, sweeping sugar dust from your doorstep, sharing caramel tea at dawn, watching children bounce through the streets with fresh, innocent wonder. What does it mean, then, to be small in a world of great legends? It means to live gently, to observe, to remember. While Finn's blade may cut through monsters and Bubblegum's science may shape kingdoms, your gift is to carry the memory of their actions. You may never step into battle, but you will tell the story of the day the Guardians awoke, You will recall the moment when the kingdom's walls glowed bright to repel an invader. You will whisper to children about the time Finn and Jake saved them all. These memories, humble though they are a kind of legacy. As night falls once again, and you return to your home, you look around at the sweet walls, the glowing lanterns, the quiet hum of candy life settling into slumber. You know that tomorrow will bring the same patterns, the same laughter, the same sweetness, but also the same uncertainty that lurks at the edges of ooh. And yet, there is comfort in that. The candy people are fragile, but together they are enduring. They do not conquer the world. They survive it. And in their survival, they carry a piece of ooh's story that no hero alone could hold. You close your sugar crystal eyes and drift into sleep, your dreams filled with gumdrop towers and caramel rivers, with the soft echo of bubblegum's voice promising safety. And though you are small, you are not meaningless. You are part of the great sweetness of ooh, a quiet life glowing gently in the vast, mysterious nights. There are nights, though, when sleep does not come easily. Nights when the air feels heavier than usual and the glow of the lantern seems dimmer, as though something unseen stirs at the edges of the kingdom. You lie awake in your frosting-lined bed, listening to the creak of sugar beams and the soft rustle of wind through the gumdrop trees. In those moments, you feel the weight of being small in a vast world, the fragility of your candy form, the truth that everything you know could be swept away in a single night. And yet those nights are rare. More often, the kingdom itself feels like a cradle, holding you gently, swaying in the rhythm of its endless sweetness. Life within the candy walls is protected not only by bubblegum science, but by the belief shared among its people, a collective faith that the sweetness will endure no matter the storms that rage outside. From your little window, you watch the horizons. You've seen flickers of light from the Fire Kingdom, deep orange sparks that pierce the night. You've seen the distant gleam of Ice King's mountain, its peak shining like a shard of glass under the moon. And you've watched the grassy plains where Finn and Jake wander, their figures small but always moving, like the restless guardians of ooh. These sights remind you that the world beyond your kingdom is alive, vast, and constantly changing. You may never walk there yourself, but you feel its pulse all the same. On rare occasions, danger makes it inside your safe haven. You remember the strange days when the kingdom was invaded, whether by Lemongrab's oppressive screeches, by the unrelenting threat of undead candy, or by more subtle forces that crept in unseen. In these moments, you understood that your life could be broken, snapped like a brittle sugar stick. And yet you survived, because the kingdom always endures. Princess Bubblegum restores what is lost, rebuilds what crumbles, and in her own meticulous way, ensures that her people remain. But here lies a question that whispers softly in your mind. Are you truly living, or are you simply existing as a piece of her creation? To outsiders, the candy people sometimes seem naive, shallow, even silly. But from the inside, you know there is a deeper truth. You feel joy, sorrow, fear, and love. You hold memories. You witness history, even if you cannot shape it. You may not be powerful, but you are real, and in your small way, you matter. There are evenings when you gather with others in the plaza, sharing stories under the glow of syrupy lanterns. These stories are simple, tales of mishaps in the kitchen, of gumdrop trees that grew too tall, of children who wandered too far and had to be rescued by a kind neighbor. But occasionally, someone whispers older lore. A candy elder might recall the earliest days when the kingdom was still new, and Princess Bubblegum's creations were fewer, rawer, and less stable. They speak of the first candy people who dissolved too quickly, or who wandered into the wilderness and never returned. These tales are told softly, rarely, but they remind you that your existence has not always been as stable as it seems. Sometimes you find yourself watching Finn and Jake when they visit. From your vantage point in the crowd, they look impossibly brave. Finn's laughter, Jake's easy comfort. It radiates outward, touching even the smallest of candy folk. You feel safer when they are near, as though their presence alone could ward off disaster. Yet you also know they cannot always be there. They are wanderers, drawn across by adventure, while you are rooted here in the sweet and fragile kingdom. Perhaps that is the difference. Heroes move, change, and confront the unknown. You instead remain carrying memory, preserving the sweetness that makes worth saving. Without small lives like yours, there would be no kingdom to protect, no people to guard, no sweetness to cherish. Heroes may shine brightest, but it is the quiet lights, the countless small flames of ordinary lives, that give the world its glow. The Candy Kingdom may look whimsical to outsiders, but to you, it is a place of deep meaning. Every gumdrop house, every syrup fountain, every marshmallow child skipping through the streets carries a piece of bubblegum's vision and a fragment of ooze resilience. You understand that your kind may never hold swords, may never cast spells, may never stand against the lich alone. But you also understand that your existence itself is resistance, the sweetness that survives against a world scarred by the Mushroom War, the gentleness that endures where chaos once reigned. As another day ends, you sit quietly outside your home, watching the stars shimmer above the candy towers. You think of how fleeting your life may be, and yet how vast your story feels within you. You think of the sweetness that surrounds you, the laughter of neighbors, the protective shadow of Bubblegum's castle. You think of Finn and Jake, distant but near in your heart, their adventures rippling across your life like gentle waves. And slowly you come to understand something. Being small does not mean being insignificant. To live a quiet life in the Candy Kingdom is to carry sweetness into a world that desperately needs it. To be fragile is not a weakness, but a reminder that life, however brief, holds beauty. And to be one candy soul among thousands is to be part of a greater story, a chorus of voices that together form the song of Ooh. So you rest once more, soft and content, your body sinking into the sugar cushions of your bed. Outside, the gumball guardians keep their unblinking watch. The night hums gently, filled with scents of caramel and chocolate drifting on the breeze. And as your sugar crystal eyes close, you dream not of battles, but of sweetness enduring, of a kingdom that survives because its people, however small, hold the heart of within them. If the Candy Kingdom was a cradle of sweetness, then the tree fort is something different. It is not the work of a ruler, not the result of science or war. It is a home grown from the earth, shaped by time, and made alive by those who inhabit it. And from the eyes of a small neighbor, perhaps a bird who nests in the rafters, or a mouse tucked quietly beneath the roots, the tree fort is not simply structure. It is a world within a world, a living place that breathes with the rhythm of those who call it home. Imagine you are such a creature, no bigger than a berry, living in the hollow of the great tree. To you, the rooms are vast chambers, filled with scents of wood, bread, and occasionally the faint tang of adventure clinging to Finn's boots. You scurry quietly along the walls, slipping through cracks and knots in the wood, unseen but ever present. From your perspective, Finn and Jake are giants, their voices rumbling like distant thunder, their laughter shaking the air around you. You may not understand their words in full, but their tone tells you everything you need to know. This is a place of warmth, a place of life. The days here are never the same. Some mornings are slow and gentle, filled with the scent of pancakes and the soft sound of BMO's cheerful songs. You sit quietly, perhaps peeking from a shadowed nook, as Jake stretches across the room in impossible shapes, his long limbs curling and bending in ways that defy logic. Finn stumbles sleepily down the steps, hair messy beneath his hat, but always with a spark in his eyes. To you, these moments are like watching the sunrise, ordinary to them, extraordinary to you. Other mornings erupt with chaos. Finn bursts through the door, sword clanging against his side, Jake bounding after him with energy that shakes the very roots of the fort. The sound of their footsteps echoes like storms rolling across the wooden floor. To a small neighbor, it feels as though the whole world shifts when they move. The walls tremble faintly, dust falls from the rafters, and yet you feel no fear. For in their chaos there is safety. Their noise drives away the silence of the wilds. And oh, the nights. The nights in the tree fort are something else entirely. The tree itself groans and whispers with the wind, its leaves rustling like lullabies against the stars. From the rafters you watch as Finn leans back in his chair, eyes heavy with sleep after another long day. Jake curls into a soft shape beside him, sometimes snoring with a sound like a gentle drum. BMO hums quietly, glowing faintly in the dim light, their electronic heartbeat a soft rhythm that fills the house. For you, a neighbor who has no grand adventures, these nights are like being held close within a story. You have watched Finn grow. At first he was a boy, restless, always eager to prove himself. His voice carried a youthful brightness, his laughter unguarded and free. But as the seasons passed, as winters came and went, you saw the subtle changes. His shoulders grew broader, his steps heavier with thought, his silences longer. You didn't understand every reason why. You only knew that something shifted, that the boy who once raced out the door with reckless joy now sometimes lingered by the window, staring into the horizon. And you, small as you are, felt that shift in the air. And unlike Jake, too, changed in his own way. His carefree nature never vanished, but sometimes, in the quiet moments, you sensed his worry for Finn. He would stretch himself into a blanket and wrap around his brother, holding him close through the night. You, from your hidden nook, would watch the silent act of love, and you understood that even heroes need comfort. There were days when strange visitors arrived. Marceline, with her shadowy presence and gentle music, sometimes floated in through the window. To you, her songs filled the fort like tides of moonlight, reaching even the smallest corners where you hid. Princess Bubblegum, on rare visits, brought with her the scent of science and sugar, her conversations with Finn and Jake serious, weighted with matters beyond your comprehension. Ice King arrived too, with a bluster that sent you scurrying deeper into the walls, though you learned quickly that his chaos was more sad than truly harmful. Each visitor, each moment, became part of the tree fort's living memory. But more than the visitors, more than the adventures, it was the ordinary days that mattered most. The days when Finn lay sprawled on the floor, reading an old book. The days when Jake played lazy tunes on his viola, filling the house with the meandering sound. The days when BMO danced in little circles, humming songs that had no beginning or end. To you, these moments were as grand as any battle, because they were real, lived and shared within the heart of the fort. And the fort itself, how alive it seemed. The tree creaked with the weight of the seasons. Its roots pulsed faintly, carrying water deep below. Sometimes at night, you felt the walls hum as though the wood remembered every laughter, every cry, every song that had ever filled it. To live here, even as a tiny, hidden creature, was to be part of something larger than yourself. The fort was not just a home. It was a being, a witness to Finn and Jake's lives, and to yours. The fort was always a stage of little mysteries. From your vantage point, tucked into a quiet hollow in the beams, you noticed things that even Finn and Jake might not. A coin lost beneath the floorboards, a crayon doodle left behind from years earlier, an old, half-forgotten trinket resting on a shelf glowing faintly under the dust. These little fragments were like fossils, telling stories of lives lived inside the fort long before today. Some nights, when the world outside was hushed, you would creep carefully across the rafters, exploring the silence. The fort was vast to you, a labyrinth of steps and open rooms, each one filled with different scents and sounds. The kitchen was warm, often sweet with the smell of syrup or baking bread. The main room hummed with echoes of laughter, games, and songs. Upstairs, Finn's room was scattered with bits of fabric, maps, and half-scribbled notes, evidence of a restless mind always thinking of what came next. You didn't understand the language of heroes, but you could feel the energy, the restless heartbeat of a boy dreaming of greatness. Every so often, something would happen that reminded you of how small you truly were. Perhaps a crash of thunder outside, shaking the walls, or the sudden arrival of a visitor whose presence filled every corner of the fort. On those days, you clung closer to the wood, pressing into the grooves of the tree, hoping the noise would pass. And always after the storm or the chaos, the fort would grow still again. Finn's soft humming, Jake's deep laugh, BMO's happy chimes. They would bring the world back into balance, reminding you that this place was not only for heroes, but also for the small lives hidden in its roots and walls. There were adventures you never saw firsthand, only felt in the absence. Days when Finn and Jake would vanish for hours, sometimes even nights, leaving the fort empty and hushed. You would wait quietly, the silence heavy, until finally their voices would return from far away. The door would burst open, and the smell of the outside world would follow them in. Smoke from distant fires, damp air from forests, or the faint metallic tang of battle. They carried their stories back like invisible cloaks, and though they rarely spoke them aloud in full, you could sense the weight of those journeys in the way they dropped their belongings, or how Finn's sigh carried more than tiredness. The fort listened too. You could feel it in the groan of the branches, in the way the leaves shifted, as if the old tree itself absorbed their lives, their struggles, their joys. Sometimes you even wondered if the fort dreamed along with them at night. The way the wind threaded through its leaves seemed almost like a lullaby composed just for the Finn and Jake, and perhaps for you too, hidden in your quiet nook. Then there were these strange nights when magic brushed too close. The air inside the fort would feel heavier, tinged with something unexplainable. Perhaps it was when Princess Bubblegum brought her experiments, or when Marceline's shadow crossed the walls, or even when Simon appeared in all his chaos. To Finn and Jake, these were visitors, friends, or nuisances. To you, they were beings of vast importance, their presence altering the very texture of the air you breathed. It was in these moments you realized that you were living inside a story, one you could never fully grasp, but one that carried you along all the same. Despite this, there was comfort in the rhythms. Finn and Jake argued sometimes, their voices rising sharp, but always softening before long. They were bound together, not just as brothers, but as halves of the same heart. Even you, a tiny neighbor, could see that. Their laughter carried differently when they were together, fuller, more certain. And in those sounds you felt safe, as though the entire fort wrapped itself around you like a blanket. Occasionally, when the night was especially still, you would crawl out from your hidden place and look upon them more closely. Finn asleep, hair spilling across his pillow, sword leaning against the wall as if standing guard. Jake curled protectively nearby, his breathing steady. BMO's screen dimmed to a gentle glow, humming the faintest notes of a song. In those moments, you knew you were witnessing something rare. Heroes at rest, stripped of their battles and responsibilities, simply existing as a family. It made the vastness of the world outside seem less daunting, because here, within the living walls of the fort, there was peace. The tree fort was not only a shelter, it was a memory keeper. It absorbed every sound, every step, every quiet moment. And you, small as you were, felt woven into that memory. You were not a hero, not a fighter, not even someone who could speak your part aloud. But in your silence, you carried the story too. You bore witness to a home that stood as both fortress and cradle, a place where the fate of Ooh sometimes began, and where, just as often, it paused to breathe. Sometimes, in your tiny explorations of the tree fort, you would stumble across something forgotten, a wooden practice sword tucked behind a chair, a little sock left wedged between the floorboards, a note scrawled on parchment, left half-finished with words that didn't quite form a sentence. To Finn and Jake, these were small accidents, things pushed aside as life rushed forward. But to you, they were treasures, fragments of a story unfolding one piece at a time. Each scrap seemed to hold echoes of laughter, arguments, or daydreams, and in the stillness of your hidden world, you pieced together meaning from these traces. There was one corner of the fort you especially loved, the high window overlooking the valley. From your perch in the rafters, you could scuttle close to the edges and see the sweep of Ooh stretching far into the horizon. By day, the land shimmered with colors, rolling green hills, rivers like blue threads, distant kingdoms rising like jewels. By night, it glowed with starlight, constellations painted across the velvet sky. You knew Finn would often stand at that same window, gazing out with a look that blended longing and curiosity. And though you could never ask him why, you felt a kinship in those shared silences, both of you small figures staring out into something vast and unknowable. The tree fort was more than a house. It was a beacon. Travelers came and went, drawn to the warmth of Finn and Jake. Marceline would drift in with her quiet songs, sometimes playful, sometimes achingly tender. Princess Bubblegum's visits brought the steady hum of science and strategy, a sharp counterpoint to the fort's earthy calm. Even strangers or wanderers found themselves at its door, as if the great tree called to anyone seeking rest or company. To you, hidden and silent, these arrivals were like stars blinking into being. Each presence shifted the atmosphere of the fort, sometimes brightening it, sometimes weighing it down, always leaving behind a faint trace that lingered after they were gone. And then there were the mornings after battles. Finn would return weary, sometimes limping, his clothes marked by dust and ash. Jake would follow, still cheerful, though his eyes carried worry. They never spoke aloud the full weight of what they had faced, but you could feel it in their movements. Finn dropping into his chair with a heavy exhale, Jake stretching himself into the shape of a blanket and draping over his friend. The air filled with unspoken stories, and even the tree seemed to hush, its branches swaying gently as though urging rest. You watched these scenes quietly, your small heart aching with empathy. You could not fight their battles, but you could keep their secrets, holding them safely within your quiet corner. There was a time you noticed Finn sitting alone in the dim light, staring into the fire. His sword lay at his feet, and though his body was still, his mind seemed far away. Jake slept nearby, and BMO's gentle hum filled the silence. You, peering from your nook, felt a heaviness in the air. Finn was growing, changing, carrying questions too big for words. You did not know the weight of destiny or prophecy, but you knew the look of someone caught between who they were and who they were becoming. And in your own way, you understood, because even the smallest creatures feel the pull of change, the soft ache of seasons shifting. The fort itself carried those changes. You could hear it in the wood, creaking with age, adapting to every new chapter. The walls had known Finn as a boy, and now they knew him as something more. They remembered Jake's endless games, BMO's laughter, the footsteps of friends, the odd scratchings of visitors who left their marks behind. And you were part of that memory, too. Your scurrying feet, your small breaths, your watchful eyes, woven into the life of the tree just as much as the giants who called it home. Sometimes you wondered if the fort would outlast them all. Trees grow old, but they also endure. You imagined a time long from now when Finn and Jake's laughter was only an echo, when BMO's hum was only a memory. Would the fort still stand then, filled with silence but heavy with remembrance? Would some other creature, like you, nestle into its hollows and feel the weight of history pressing gently around them? Perhaps. And perhaps that is what made the fort so extraordinary. It was not just a shelter for the living, but a keeper of their echoes. Still, for now, it lived. Every morning when sunlight spilled through its windows, every night when moonlight painted its walls, the fort breathed with warmth. And you, a small neighbor, lived within its rhythm. You were no hero, no singer of songs, but you bore witness to something greater, the quiet, ordinary heart of heroes at home. And in that there was a kind of magic, too. The kind that lingers even after the battles are forgotten, even after the world has turned. The seasons around the tree fort came and went, and you learned to feel them in the smallest details. In the spring, blossoms crowned the branches overhead, and pollen drifted like golden dust through the windows. You tasted it on the air and felt the house grow bright with new energy. Finn and Jake often rose earlier in those days, bounding into the sunlight with fresh eagerness, laughter carrying far across the valley. In summer, the fort grew heavy with warmth. Long days of adventure left Finn and Jake sprawled on the floor, the windows thrown open to catch the faintest breeze, while BMO played cheerful tunes that drifted lazily through the rooms. Autumn, though, was your favorite. The tree itself seemed to whisper more deeply then, its bark groaning in the wind, its leaves crackling into gold and amber. Finn's footsteps grew slower, more thoughtful. Jake's laughter remained, but there was a mellow note to it, a softer echo. The fort gathered them close as nights grew cooler, its wood creaking with comfort. And in winter, the house became a cocoon. The windows frosted over, the rooms filled with the glow of firelight. Finn huddled under blankets. Jake stretched into shapes that kept the cold at bay. And BMO glowed like a little hearth in the corner. To you, tucked into the walls, these seasons were not simply passing time. They were stories, told in colors and sounds, written into the living bark of the tree. And as the years stretched on, you noticed the quieter shifts that only a small, observant neighbor could see. The way Finn's hat, once too large, now fit snugly as he grew. The way his laugh deepened over time, carrying more weight, but also more kindness. The way Jake, once seemingly endless in his energy, sometimes stretched himself slower with a hint of weariness in his movements. Even BMO changed in their own way, learning new games, telling new stories, collecting the fragments of time in their circuits. From your hidden perspective, you saw what others might not. That even heroes are not always heroes. They are friends, brothers, children of the world, simply trying to find joy, to find rest, to keep moving forward one day at a time. The tree fort was the proof of that. No grand throne, no kingdom walls, no crown, just a home, imperfect and alive, filled with laughter, arguments, music, silence, and love. You sometimes thought of the dangers outside. Monsters lurking in the forests, ruins echoing with old wars, magic that twisted reality. And you realized how remarkable it was that such a place as this could exist at all, untouched at its heart. The tree fort stood not as a fortress against darkness, but as a refuge of light, built not from power but from care. And though you were small, tucked into your unnoticed corner, you belonged to that light too. You were part of its unseen fabric, carried along by the pulse of its days and nights. There were moments when you dreamed of leaving, of venturing out to see beyond the valley. But whenever the wind howled too loudly or the stars shimmered with unfamiliar patterns, you stayed close. This fort was your anchor. It held the giants who shaped the world, and it held you as well in its quiet embrace. And perhaps, you thought, there was no smaller or greater part to play. Every life within these walls mattered, even yours. One night you watched Finn sit awake longer than usual, gazing out at the moon. His face was calm, though shadowed with thoughts too vast for you to understand. Jake stirred beside him, mumbling softly, and BMO clicked faintly in sleep. Finn whispered something then, not loud enough for you to hear, but carried with a tone that felt like a promise. And in that whisper, you felt the weight of a truth, that the tree fort was not just their home, but their heart, that wherever their adventures carried them, this place would always call them back. The branches outside swayed, the leaves whispering as if to agree, and you, hidden in your nook, curled closer into the wood. You felt the house hold you, felt the night settle gently, felt the rhythm of life carrying onward. You closed your eyes, letting the lull of the fort wash over you, safe in the knowledge that you were part of something larger, a witness to the quiet, human moments that made legends into people. So the tree fort stood, alive with memory, breathing with warmth, sheltering both giants and the tiniest of creatures alike. It did not ask to be a monument, nor a legend, nor a fortress. It simply existed, quietly and beautifully, holding stories in its branches and roots. And you, a small neighbor, would remember them all long after the echoes of their laughter had drifted into silence. Out beyond the shade of the tree fort, past the winding roots and the gentle curve of the hills, stretched the wide grassland. To many, this place is nothing more than empty space, a field between kingdoms, a meadow crossed on the way to somewhere else. But for a small wanderer, perhaps a field mouse or a rabbit, or even one of those curious little creatures that birthed long after the old world fell, the grasslands are everything. They are shelter and danger, playground and battlefield, silence and song. Imagine for a moment that you are such a wanderer. Your home is not a grand kingdom, nor a house built high in a tree. Your home is the grass itself, tall and shifting, rolling with the wind like waves on an endless sea. Each blade towers above you, green walls that part as you scurry, whispering their secrets as they bend and sway. The air here is thick with scents of earth, flowers, and faraway rain. Above you, the sky stretches open and endless, carrying clouds that drift like soft ships, sometimes glowing gold with the morning sun, sometimes silver with moonlight. From your small perspective, the grasslands are alive. Each day brings different rhythms. In the early dawn, dew clings to every leaf and stem, sparkling like countless jewels. The world feels hushed then, as if holding its breath before waking. Birds wheel overhead, their wings cutting arcs across the pale sky, their songs spilling down in ribbons of sound. As the sun rises, the warmth spreads, insects buzz lazily, and the grass hums with the energy of life. By night, The meadow becomes a shadowed forest of stalks, filled with the quiet sounds of unseen creatures moving softly through the dark. The stars above are clearer here than anywhere else, glittering so brightly it feels as though they could fall into the grass at any moment. And always, from time to time, you see the heroes. Finn and Jake cross these fields often, sometimes in haste, sometimes wandering with no particular aim at all. To them, the grasslands are a path, a space to be moved through. But to you, their presence is like the arrival of titans. You hear them before you see them. Their laughter carried on the wind, their footsteps shaking the earth beneath your paws. You watch them pass from your hiding place, the boy's sword gleaming in the sun, the dog stretching himself into shapes you cannot fathom. They are both fearsome and kind, forces of energy that ripple through the land like storms. But your world is not only shaped by them. There are other figures, too, glimpsed from afar. Travelers wandering the meadows, their cloaks catching in the grass. Creatures of shadow that slip silently between stalks, carrying the faint scent of danger. Even the occasional kingdom emissary, marching across the land with banners and orders, their presence stirring the stillness into something restless. You watch them all, careful and unseen, learning the rhythms of their passage. For though the grasslands are wide and beautiful, they are not without peril. To a wanderer of your size, danger comes in many forms. The sudden shadow of a hawk overhead, the rumble of a beast far too large to challenge, even the sharp change in wind that carries with it the scent of fire. And yet, you survive. You learn the secret paths between roots and stones. You listen into the wind and the soil. You move with the quiet patience of one who belongs here, not as ruler or conqueror, but as part of the meadow's living song. And in the still moments, when the dangers drift far away and the fields grow calm, you feel the quiet magic that lingers in ooh. The grass seems to glow faintly in the moonlight, as though remembering the world that was lost. Strange flowers bloom suddenly overnight, shimmering with colors that shift when touched by morning dew. Sometimes the very air hums with energy, and you sense that beneath the soil, old forces are sleeping, waiting for a time when they might wake again. You do not fear these mysteries. You simply live among them, carrying your small story alongside theirs. For though the grasslands stretch wide, you are never truly alone. Every rustle hides another life, other wanderers like you, tiny voices singing their quiet songs in the vastness. And above it all, the heroes cross, the kingdoms shift, the stars burn. You are part of it, small but present, a witness to Oo's grand story told in the hush of blades and the sweep of sky. The grasslands have a rhythm, almost like breathing. In the mornings, the world feels wide and slow, each blade heavy with dew, bending gently under the weight of silver droplets. As you move through the stalks, they brush against your fur or feathers, marking your path in trails that vanish as quickly as they appear. The ground is cool, damp, and rich with scents of soil and stone. Every step feels like moving through a cathedral of green, the grass arching high above, filtering sunlight into shifting mosaics on the earth below. By midday, the meadow changes. The dew has vanished, replaced by warmth that hums across the open land. Grasshoppers leap in quick arcs, beetles crawl with steady determination, and bees weave between blossoms with a low and constant music. The air trembles with life, and you, a small wanderer, become just one note in this chorus. It is a symphony without conductor, and yet it flows seamlessly, each sound and movement blending into the next. Sometimes in this brightness, you pause to watch the distant kingdoms. From the tops of small hills you can see the Candy Kingdom glinting in the sunlight, its walls a mosaic of pink and cream. Farther away, the Ice Kingdom gleams like a frozen crown on the horizon, its peaks sharp and cold even from a distance. At night, the flicker of fire reveals villages tucked into valleys, their glow rising faintly into the starlit sky. You know little of what passes within those places, but you sense their power. Each is a world unto itself, and yet they all share this wide grassland, the silent stretch between walls and mountains. You also notice what lingers closer to the ground, strange artifacts sometimes half buried in the soil, remnants of the time before. A rusted wheel broken and swallowed by weeds, a shard of glass that catches the light like a jewel, old bones worn smooth by rain, whispering of lives long past. To the giants who roam here, these are nothing more than forgotten fragments, but to you, they are monuments. You trace them carefully, learning their shapes, wondering what stories they once held. And though you cannot know the full truth, you feel the meadow remembers. The earth has swallowed wars, dreams, and ruins, carrying them quietly in its roots. It is here, too, that you sometimes feel the presence of magic, a ripple in the air, subtle and strange, bending the light in ways that make the grass seem taller, the sky deeper, the shadows alive. You have learned to trust your senses in these moments, to pause, to wait, to listen. Sometimes the magic passes gently, like a breeze carrying a dream. Other times it feels sharper, heavier, leaving the grass quivering long after the air grows still again. The meadow is no stranger to such things. Ooh itself hums with ancient power, and the grasslands, though quiet, are no exception. And then there are the days when Finn and Jake return. From your low vantage, you see them cresting the horizon, their figures towering against the sky. Sometimes Finn runs with energy that ripples the grass in waves behind him, Jake stretching into long strides that seem to swallow distance with ease. Other times they walk more slowly, their heads bowed together, voices carrying only faintly in the wind. You do not always understand their moods, but you recognize the feeling of change. Heroes walk differently depending on what they've seen, and the grasslands often cradle them in those moments of quiet in between. You remember one day in particular. Finn raced ahead, laughter spilling out as he swung his sword playfully through the stalks. Jake followed, stretching himself into rolling shapes, tumbling across the meadow as though the grass was his personal playground. To you, it was like watching the sky come to life. Their joy filled the field, their footsteps sending vibrations into the soil beneath your paws. You hid, but you did not fear them. Their presence felt like sunlight, loud, powerful, but warm all the same. Another time, though, they moved slower. Finn's steps dragged, his face clouded with thought, his shoulders heavy. Jake padded close, quieter than usual, his voice a low comfort that you could barely hear. The meadow held them both gently, the wind softer that day, the grass swaying in a rhythm that matched their weary pace. You felt the change then, that sometimes even heroes needed the stillness of the fields, needed the wide horizon to carry their unspoken burdens. For you, a wanderer, the grasslands are endless. But through the eyes of Finn and Jake, you see how even this wide emptiness holds meaning. It is not simply a place to pass through. It is a place where the world breathes, where silence allows voices to soften, where the sky meets the soil and reminds all who cross it that they are small beneath the stars. You, who are small already, understand this deeply, and perhaps that is why you remain here, wandering these fields, listening to their stories as they ripple like wind across the grass. There are nights in the grasslands when the world feels impossibly large. The sky stretches out like a canvas of dark velvet, scattered with countless stars, each one flickering with a rhythm that seems almost alive. From your low perch, the grass towers above, swaying softly in the cool wind. Fireflies rise in slow spirals, carrying their pale golden light upward as if trying to join the constellations. You watch them until the line between sky and earth blurs, until the stars above and the fireflies below become one drifting ocean of light. You've learned to find safety in the sounds of the night. The chorus of crickets acts like a lullaby, steady and reliable. Frogs hidden near shallow pools croak in uneven rhythms, filling the silence with a sense of life. Even the far-off howls of creatures in the distance, though sometimes chilling, remind you that this world breathes with you. You're never truly alone, not anew. Every corner, every patch of grass, every shadow holds a presence. From time to time, you catch glimpses of things that feel older than the land itself. A patch of glowing mushrooms that only appear beneath a full moon. Stones arranged in patterns too precise to be accidents, half buried under vines. Pools of water that reflect the sky even when clouds cover it, as if showing you a hidden world beyond your own. These small wonders aren't always noticeable to the larger folk who stride across the meadows, but to you, who spends hours tracing the smallest details, they are treasures. They are proof that the grasslands are not empty. They are alive with stories, subtle but unending. When storms roll in, you find yourself both afraid and awed. The first signs arrive with a restless wind, bending the tall grass into waves. The sky grows darker, clouds gathering in shades of gray and violet. Then the rumble of thunder, low, distant, like a giant clearing its throat. You huddle close to the earth as lightning slices across the horizon, each flash revealing the meadow in stark, brilliant detail. The rain follows soon after, pouring down with a force that presses every stalk to the ground. In those moments, the grasslands transform into an ocean, each blade bending like waves, the world reduced to sound and motion. And when the storm passes, when the sky cracks open to reveal soft patches of blue, you emerge. The air smells clean, sharp with ozone and sweet with wet earth. Puddles shimmer with reflections of the clearing sky, and droplets cling to your whiskers or wings like tiny jewels. The meadow breathes again, and you with it. The storms never last forever. They come and go, fierce but fleeting, leaving the grasslands renewed. It is in the quiet after storms that you sometimes find the strangest things washed to the surface. Bits of metal, smooth from years underground. Shards of ceramic, faintly painted with patterns that no one remembers anymore. Once you stumbled across a strange box that hummed faintly when touched, its insides cracked and tangled with wires. You didn't understand its purpose, but you could feel it carried something from a world long gone. You left it where it was, unsure if it was meant for hands much larger than yours, or perhaps for none at all. The grasslands also serve as crossroads. You've seen travelers pass through, merchants with carts full of sweets, explorers with journals tucked under their arms, even wizards whose cloaks trail sparks that leave the grass glowing faintly in their wake. You don't speak to them, of course, but you watch. You learn their rhythms, their habits, their caution. Some walk with wonder, others with fear, but all leave their mark on the meadow. A bent stalk here, a dropped trinket there. The grass remembers every passage. One evening you spotted Marceline drifting lazily above the field, her bass guitar slung across her back. She hummed a tune as she floated, her eyes half closed as if listening to something only she could hear. The sound carried faintly down to you, a low vibration threading through the grass. It wasn't a song meant for anyone in particular, but it wrapped around the meadow like a soft blanket, lingering even after she was gone. Moments like that remind you that the great figures of Ooh are not so distant. They walk and drift through the same spaces you do, leaving echoes behind. And sometimes there are darker presences, creatures who stalk the grasslands with hunger in their eyes, moving with a silence that unsettles the earth. You have hidden from wolves whose eyes gleamed red in the moonlight, from shadows that seemed to detach themselves from the ground and crawl on their own, from machines left over from a war long before your time. These moments remind you of your size, your fragility. Yet even in fear, you notice the balance of it all. For every predator, there is a safe hiding place. For every chase, a path that opens just when you need it most. The meadow is not cruel, nor is it kind. It simply is. And within that truth, you find your place. But your favorite moments are still the mornings, when the world is quietest. The horizon blushes with the first hints of dawn, and the dew returns to coat everything in shimmering silver. Birds stir in the branches of lone trees, their songs soft but insistent. The air is cool, filled with the scent of new beginnings. You rise with the light, your small frame blending into the rustle of grass. And in those moments, you feel as though the meadow belongs only to you, that you are the sole witness to its beauty. The grasslands are vast, but to a wanderer they are intimate. Each patch of earth holds memory. Each gust of wind carries whispers. Each day unfolds like a story, and you, though small, are a part of it. Not as a hero, not as a ruler, not as a figure of legend, but as a presence that listens, that notices, that remembers. And in a world as strange and wondrous as sometimes that is enough. When you have lived long enough in the grasslands, you begin to understand its language. The meadow speaks in movements and scents, in the rustle of stalks and the weight of the wind. A sudden hush means danger nearby. A shift in the bird song means the hour is changing. Even the soil carries messages. The cool dampness of approaching rain, the warmth of a sun that will blaze high and relentless. You don't need clocks or maps when the whole meadow is a compass, guiding you with subtle signals that larger folk seldom notice. Sometimes, in the quiet of twilight, you imagine what it would be like to be one of those larger folk, to stride across the meadow without fear of hawks or foxes, to look out and see the horizon rather than walls of grass. Perhaps you would sing songs aloud or carry treasures from one kingdom to another. Yet, in your heart, you know there is a kind of power in being small. The meadow reveals secrets to those who live close to the ground. You see what others overlook. You hear the whispers they cannot. The world unfolds differently when every pebble is a mountain, every puddle a lake, every blade of grass a towering tree. One evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and pink, you caught sight of Finn running through the fields. His laughter carried across the grass like music, Jake bounding alongside him in impossible shapes. They didn't know you were there, watching from your hidden place. They rarely noticed creatures as small as you, but that didn't matter. Their joy filled the meadow, turning the fields into a stage for their endless play. You didn't need to be part of their story to feel its warmth. Sometimes, simply witnessing is enough. And yet the meadow does not only echo with laughter. You felt the chill when darkness settles. Shadows lengthen, and the grass grows still. Sometimes strange lights flicker in the distance, will-o'-the-wisps that dance just beyond reach. Other times you hear sounds that belong to no animal you know, low guttural tones, or mechanical whirs that recall the old machines buried beneath the earth. On those nights, you press yourself close to the soil and remind yourself of the meadow's balance. For every strange presence, there is still the sky above, the stars keeping their watch, the crickets carrying their steady song. In the heart of the grasslands lies a circle of stones, old and cracked, their surfaces covered in moss. You found it once while wandering, tucked away where the grass grew higher than usual. The air there felt heavier, charged with an energy that hummed against your skin. You don't know what the stones once were. Perhaps the remains of an ancient ritual site, or markers from a forgotten kingdom. But standing among them, you felt time bend. The meadow is full of such places. Ruins half swallowed by roots, relics peeking out of the soil, reminders that Oo's present is built upon layers of pasts. To most wanderers, these things are just curiosities. To you, they are proof that every patch of grass carries a memory that nothing is ever truly lost. And perhaps that is why you continue your wandering. To listen, to notice, to remember. You are small, yes, but your steps add to the meadow's story. Every path you take, every hiding place you learn, every breath you draw in the cool night air is another note in the endless song of Ooh. No creature is too small to matter here. Even the tiniest rustle in the grass becomes part of the whole. As the seasons turn, the meadow shifts but never disappears. In spring, the grass grows fresh and tender, dotted with blossoms in every color. Summer brings heat, long days where the air hums with bees and the earth radiates warmth. Autumn paints the field in gold and copper, the tall stalks swaying like dancers before their fall. Winter presses frost into the soil, the blades crisp and brittle, bending under the weight of snow. Through each change you endure. The meadow is not just a home, it is a cycle, a rhythm, an eternal turning that carries you forward. There will always be kingdoms rising and falling on the edges of these fields. There will always be heroes striding across the land, villains stirring chaos, magic flickering like a restless flame. But the grasslands remain, and so do you. And as you curl yourself into a hollow of grass at the close of another long day, you listen once more to the sounds around you, the soft chirping of insects, the gentle sway of the blades above, the low sigh of the wind moving through endless green. The stars stretch wide overhead, their light falling softly on your small form. You are just one wanderer, one presence in the vastness. Yet in this quiet moment, the whole of Ooh feels close, as if the meadow itself is cradling you to sleep. And so the wanderer rests, carried by the rhythm of the grasslands, a tiny voice in the great chorus of a living world. If the grasslands are a sea of green stretching wide and endless, then the candy forest is something different entirely. It is a place that feels almost like a dream, grown not from the natural world alone, but from the imagination of those who shaped Ooh after the old world ended. To step inside is to cross a threshold, leaving behind the plain fields and entering a place where trees bear sugar-crusted bark, where the air carries the scent of caramel and cinnamon, and where even the shadows feel strangely sweet. The candy forest lies close to the candy kingdom, though its borders are not always clear. One moment you are walking through simple meadowlands or along a dirt road, and the next, the trunks of gumdrop trees rise around you, their canopies glowing with shades of pink and orange. Peppermint shrubs cluster near the base of the trunks, their striped leaves cool to the touch. Licorice vines snake between branches, some so long they dangle like ribbons in the wind. There is a quiet music here, not sung by birds, but carried by the gentle creaking of sugarwood and the soft hum of wind slipping through rock candy leaves. For a small inhabitant, the forest is both wondrous and strange. Every surface offers something edible, though not always safe. A bite from a glittering leaf might fill you with warmth, while another might leave your tongue numb with bitter frost. The forest does not give itself freely. It asks you to listen, to learn which sweets are meant as gifts, and which are meant as warnings. It is a place where curiosity is rewarded, but caution is essential. During the day, shafts of sunlight cut through the branches, scattering rainbow hues across the sugared ground. Tiny creatures scurry between the roots, gumdrop beetles with glossy shells, marshmallow mice with fur so soft they nearly melt when touched, and shy licorice snakes that vanish into the undergrowth with a whip-like flick. They make their homes inside hollow chocolate logs or beneath mounds of hardened caramel. If you are still enough, you can see their little rituals, a family of sugar beetles working together to roll a candy sphere back to their burrow, or marshmallow mice grooming one another under the safety of a peppermint bush. By night, the candy forest becomes a glowing wonder. Many of its plants are bioluminescent, their colors blooming when the sun dips below the horizon. Cotton candy blossoms unfurl pale pink glows, while clusters of sugar crystal fungi glimmer in blues and greens. The forest floor sparkles faintly as though dusted with stardust. Fireflies drift lazily among the branches, their light mingling with the glow of the candy plants until the air looks painted with gentle constellations. In those hours, the forest feels more like a dream than a real place, soft and unhurried, a cradle of sweetness in the wide expanse of ooh. And yet, for all its beauty, the candy forest holds secrets. There are hollow paths that twist far beneath the roots, where syrup drips steadily in the darks. There are groves where no sound can be heard at all, as if the forest is holding its breath. And there are places touched by shadows, where the candy has melted into strange, sharp forms, more like glass than sugar. Few wander deep into those places, for even in a land as gentle as the Candy Kingdom, something of the old chaos lingers. From time to time, heroes step through the forest. You might hear the voices of Finn and Jake echoing between the trunks, their laughter scattering small creatures and shaking sugar dust from the leaves. Or perhaps Princess Bubblegum herself moving through with her careful gaze, studying the balance of her sweet creations. To her, the candy forest is more than scenery. It is part of her kingdom, an extension of her will and her science. But to those who live small lives within it, the forest is something older than any ruler, a living, breathing world that hums with its own soft power. For those who wander quietly, the forest becomes a kind of teacher. Its paths do not run straight. They bend and circle, leading you to notice things you might otherwise overlook. A hollow tree with spirals carved into its bark, perhaps from hands long gone. A pool of sugar water so clear it reflects the stars even when clouds cover the sky. A trail of gummy fruit scattered as though left for someone to follow. Each discovery reminds you that the candy forest, no matter how gentle it seems, has stories hidden in its heart. And in those stories, if you listen closely enough, you may hear whispers of the wider world, echoes of Ooh's forgotten past, carried in the rustle of candy leaves. As you wander deeper, the candy forest begins to show its layers. At first it seems simple, just trees and shrubs, each one sweet to the touch. But if you spend time within it, if you walk the same paths over many days, you start to notice its moods. Some mornings the forest wakes bright and cheerful, sunlight scattering across sugar leaves and streams of syrup bubbling merrily through the roots. Other mornings the same paths feel subdued, the air damp and heavy, the branches sagging as if weighed down by unseen thoughts. The candy forest is alive, not just in the obvious way of plants and animals, but with a personality of its own. There are corners where the forest feels protective, its branches knitting closely overhead, sheltering you from the open sky. These places are warm and quiet, a natural refuge. You might curl up beside a chocolate stump, listening to the hum of candy insects and the distant dripping of syrup. The ground here is soft, blanketed with spun sugar moss that seems to sigh gently when pressed. It is easy to drift into sleep in such places, the sweetness of the air lulling you into dreams. And then there are clearings where the forest seems to open itself wide. In one such place, lollipop trees rise in careful circles, their bright colors reflecting the sunlight in dazzling patterns. At the center lies a pool of sugar water, perfectly still, its surface mirroring the candy canopy above. The creatures of the forest gather here, beetles, mice, licorice snakes, even shy gumdrop birds that flutter down from higher branches to drink. Watching them, you realize that the candy forest is not a static thing. It breathes, it gathers, it creates moments of harmony. But harmony is never the whole story. Hidden within its sweetness are reminders of ooze fragility. Near the edges of the forest, you sometimes find trees half melted, their once solid bark dripping into sticky pools. Some whisper that these places are scars from the old mushroom war, where the earth itself remembers fire and destruction. Others say they are simply reminders that candy, no matter how strong, will always soften with time. Whatever the cause, these melted groves feel different. The air is heavier, the sweetness sour, and the ground treacherous. You move carefully there, sensing that not all of the forest's secrets are meant to be tasted. Still, the candy forest is not a place of despair. Even in its broken corners, new life rises. Sprouts of candied clover push through cracks in the ground. Sugar crystal fungi bloom on melted trunks, glowing gently in the shadows. The forest knows how to heal itself, though it may take years or decades. Perhaps that is the quiet lesson of this place, that sweetness is not fragile, but enduring. It bends, it softens, it melts, but it always finds a way to return. For those who live within the Candy Kingdom, the forest is often seen as a backdrop, a resource, or even just a pleasant place for picnics. Children of candy folk chase each other between the trees, their laughter blending with the rustle of branches. Merchants gather herbs of peppermint and bark of sugarwood to sell in the markets. Guards patrol its edges, ensuring that no unwelcome figures creep too close to the kingdom's heart. To them, the candy forest is simply an extension of home. But to the smaller creatures who call it their world, it is vast and mysterious, a land of wonders and dangers, a place where every shadow and every sparkle carries meaning. And sometimes the forest receives visitors who do not belong to the kingdom at all. Finn and Jake, of course, have wandered its paths on countless adventures, their voices bright against the candy air. Marceline has drifted here, her songs weaving a different kind of sweetness through the leaves. Even strangers from faraway lands pass beneath its canopy, their boots crunching softly on sugar moss, their eyes wide with curiosity. You watch them from the safety of peppermint shadows, unseen yet present, a witness to their passing. The forest seems to remember all of them. If you walk carefully, you can still find marks left behind. A sword's cut in a gumdrop trunk, faint but enduring. A patch of spun sugar moss flattened where someone once slept. A small trinket dropped and half buried in the caramel soil. These traces remind you that the candy forest is not separate from Ooze's larger story. It is a stage where countless tales have been told, each one leaving behind a subtle echo. And in the stillness, when no voices disturb its sweetness, the candy forest hums quietly to itself, a low, steady vibration that seems to rise from the roots and travel through the air. If you press your ear against a chocolate trunk, you can hear it, a sound like distant humming, endless and patient. Perhaps it is the forest dreaming, or perhaps it is simply alive in ways no one fully understands. There are stories told among the candy folk about what rests at the deepest heart of the forest. Some say there is a grove of everlasting sweets, where the trees never melt, and the air itself tastes of honey. Others whisper of darker corners, where shadows cling to the sugar bark and the candy is soured into something sharp and glassy. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between. The candy forest is not only a creation of Princess Bubblegum's science, it is also a child of Ooh itself, touched by the same magic and mystery that shaped the land after the old world fell. When you travel deep enough, you begin to notice how the forest changes. The gumdrop trunks grow taller, their bark thicker, and the light that filters down is softer, tinted in pale pinks and golds. The air grows cooler, heavy with the scent of syrup and peppermint. Here the creatures are fewer but stranger. A licorice serpent winding lazily through the branches, its scales glinting like black glass. A cluster of marshmallow moth, their wings glowing faintly as they flutter from blossom to blossom. Even the beetles grow larger, their candy shells patterned like jewels, their movements deliberate and slow. At the forest's heart, the ground dips into a hollow where an ancient chocolate tree spreads its vast branches. Its bark is dark and weathered, cracked in places where sap flows like ribbons of golden caramel. Legends say this tree was the first of the candy forest, planted not by Princess Bubblegum, but by the earth itself, rising as a gift when the land first began to heal after the war. Whether true or not, the tree radiates a stillness unlike anywhere else. Standing beneath its canopy, you feel the weight of time, as though the forest is watching you, remembering every creature that has ever paused here. Sometimes, if you sit quietly in the hollow, you may hear voices, not loud or clear, but soft whispers carried on the rustle of the branches. They sound like fragments of stories, half-formed words, laughter, sighs. Some believe these are the echoes of candy folk who lived long ago, their spirits lingering within the roots. Others think the whispers belong to the forest itself, murmuring in a language too old to be understood. Whatever the truth, the sound is gentle, never frightening, a reminder that the forest is more than sweetness. It is memory, too. But even here, shadows sometimes stir. The candy forest is not immune to the creeping darknesses of Ooh. On certain nights, when the moon is hidden and the stars seem distant, you may find patches where the candy has turned brittle and sharp. Shards of sugar rise from the ground like glass, their edges glittering in the faint light. These shards hum faintly when touched, like tuning forks struck by unseen hands. No one knows what causes them, whether they are remnants of the Mushroom War or the result of some imbalance in Princess Bubblegum's experiments. Whatever their source, they are dangerous to the unwary, and the smaller creatures of the forest keep well away. And yet, even the darker parts of the forest have their beauty. When moonlight strikes the sugar shards, they glow in pale blues and silvers, scattering light across the ground like a frozen river. The danger is there, but so is wonder. That is the nature of Ooh, and the candy forest is no exception. Traveling through the forest, you also notice the subtle ways it interacts with the kingdom beyond. Carved paths lead outward, connecting it to the markets and streets of the Candy Kingdom. Sometimes candy folk gather in the clearings for celebrations, lanterns strung between branches, laughter echoing deep into the night. On those occasions, the forest feels alive with joy, its trees swaying gently as though dancing to the music. For the small creatures who live hidden in the roots and hollows, these gatherings are both exciting and overwhelming. You peek out from shadows, watching the lanterns rise like glowing sweets into the sky, listening to the songs that mingle with the hum of the trees. But once the celebrations end, the forest returns to its quiet rhythm. The candy folk depart, the lanterns fade, and the forest resumes its slow breathing. That is when you feel closest to its heart. When the trees seem to sigh in relief, the creatures return to their burrows, and the air regains its steady sweetness. To live in the candy forest is to accept its cycles, its sweetness and its shadows, its light and its silence. Every day brings something slightly different. A new blossom glowing in the night, a patch of moss melted into sticky syrup, a trail of licorice seeds scattered across the ground. For those willing to pay attention, the forest offers endless small mysteries, each one reminding you that even in a kingdom of candy, nature has its own voice. And so when you curl up at the base of a peppermint trunk, listening to the hum that threads through the ground, you feel a quiet comfort. The candy forest is not just a place to pass through. It is a presence, a guardian, a witness, and in its sweet stillness, you too become part of its story. There are times when the candy forest feels like more than a home for sweets and creatures. It feels like a dream given shape, like the soft glow of a memory made solid. Walking deeper among the gumdrop trunks, you sense that it holds secrets not meant to be unraveled quickly. The way the roots twist into intricate patterns beneath the soil, or the way the blossoms bloom in spirals instead of circles. These are not coincidences. They are quiet signs that the forest listens, that it remembers, and that it may even be guiding its own growth. If you lean close to the peppermint bark, you might notice faint etchings hidden in the swirls like veins of history pressed into the sugar grain. Some of them look like runes, others like simple spirals, but all pulse faintly when the moonlight falls across them. Many candy folk never notice, their eyes too accustomed to seeing the forest as just another part of their kingdom. But the smaller creatures, the watchers hidden in hollows and burrows, have always known. The candy forest speaks through patterns and whispers, a language not of words, but of presence. Legends passed down among the oldest candy elders say that the forest stretches back farther than bubblegum's creations, farther even than the kingdom itself. Some claim it grew out of the remains of forgotten magic, crystallized after the Mushroom War like a dream that refused to fade. Others believe the land itself shaped it as a gentle counterbalance to the destruction that had scarred Ooh. Whether truth or tale, the candy forest feels older than it looks, and standing within its heart, you cannot help but sense the weight of something ancient and kind. And yet, like all things in Ooh, the forest has its dual nature. Sweetness and danger are never far apart. There are stretches of the woods where the ground turns spongy, where your footsteps sink into caramel mud that clings to your ankles. There are thorny vines of sour rope candy that snarl themselves into thick walls, their tips sharp enough to pierce. Once in a while you'll hear a sudden snap in the branches above, and a toffee branch comes crashing down, hardened and heavy. The forest offers nourishment and shelter, but it asks for respect. To wander carelessly is to invite its quiet tests. The small animals who call it home understand this balance well. Marshmallow squirrels dart quickly, never staying in one place too long. Gummy birds perch lightly, wings twitching with every shift in the wind. Even the licorice serpent moves with measured grace, its coils sliding between roots without disturbing them. They know the forest can be generous, offering syrup pools to drink from, or blossom petals that soothe tired wings, but they also know that greed, or carelessness, leads only to traps. As night falls, the candy forest transforms in ways that feel almost sacred. Bioluminescent fungi sparkle faintly near the roots, glowing in colors of pale lavender and mint green. The canopy above sways, and the gaps between branches reveal a quilt of stars, their cold silver light softened by the sweet haze rising from the sugar bark. It is quiet at first, but then, like a slow heartbeat, a hum begins to ripple through the trunks. Each tree vibrates faintly, a resonance that carries across the forest until the whole place seems to sing. It is not a melody, but a harmony of presence, the forest reminding all who rest within it that they are part of something vast. If you lie still on the sugared moss and close your eyes, the hum settles into your chest, syncing with your breath. In that moment, you could swear you are no longer just a wanderer. You are a root, a branch, a blossom. The forest enfolds you, sweet and still, and in that closeness you feel as though it is protecting you, cradling you like one of its own. It is a lullaby written in silence, a story told without word. And yet, for all its beauty, the candy forest does not exist apart from ooh. It is touched by the comings and goings of heroes and villains alike. Finn and Jake have raced through these woods, their laughter shaking the branches as they chased after some fleeting adventure. Princess Bubblegum has walked here in thought, her mind calculating, her hands brushing gently against the trunks, as though they were both her children and her secrets. On rare nights, even strangers from distant lands have wandered its paths, leaving traces of foreign scents and faint, lingering footsteps. The forest accepts them all, quietly watching, quietly remembering. It does not choose sides, nor does it pass judgment. It simply records in its roots and in its whispers the stories of those who step beneath its canopy. That is what makes it feel so alive, the sense that it is not merely a backdrop, but a participant in the great tale of ooh. When morning comes, the forest shifts once again. The blossoms unfurl, releasing soft clouds of sugar dust that sparkle in the sunlight. Birds take flight, squirrels chatter, and the hum recedes to a gentle thrum, low and steady beneath the day's brightness. Life resumes, playful and light. To the candy folk who pass through on their way to the kingdom, it is simply another day in a sweet wood. But for those who pause long enough to listen, the forest reveals itself as more than that. It is a keeper of balance, a protector of memory, and a reminder that even in a land born from chaos and magic, gentleness endures. And so whether you are a candy person, wandering home after dusk, or a tiny marshmallow moth resting on a caramel petal, or simply a quiet dreamer drifting to sleep with the thought of sugar bark and peppermint air, the candy forest becomes part of your story. You are carried into its embrace, and in turn, it becomes a part of you. Its song does not end. Not really. It carries on in the hush of branches, in the sparkle of dust at dawn, in the sweetness that lingers in the air long after you've left its shade. The candy forest holds you, always in its quiet rhythm. When the sun dips below the horizon in ooh, the land shifts in ways that only the night creatures truly understand. The bright colors of day fade into muted tones, and the laughter that usually carries across meadows and forests grows quieter, replaced by the softer rhythms of nocturnal life. It is in this gentle darkness that we find a perspective often unseen, the viewpoint of a small creature who belongs not to the bustling daylight, but to the mysteries of the night. Imagine yourself as a tiny being, no larger than a loaf of bread, fur or scales glimmering faintly under the starlight. You move silently across the grass, paws or claws brushing against dewdrops that glow faintly with magical shimmer. The world feels enormous. The blades of grass rise like towers around you. The smallest twig seems like a fallen bridge, and the rustle of the wind becomes a sweeping current you must navigate. To you, the night is not a time for rest. It is when the world opens its quiet stage, and every shadow tells a story. From this scale, the sounds of ooh shift. The distant hoot of the cosmic owl carries with an almost thunderous echo, as if it is both far away and impossibly close. The whispers of nocturnal insects become an orchestra of clicks and chirps, each one weaving into a soft blanket of sound. Somewhere in the distance, You hear the faint giggle of the nightosphere's magic slipping briefly into this plane, or the faint crackle of a campfire where Finn and Jake might be telling each other stories. But for you, the most important sound is the rhythm of your own small breath, a reminder that you are alive and awake in this kingdom of giants and wonders. As a creature of the night, you know places where even heroes rarely wander. Beneath the roots of towering trees, there are burrows where the earth still carries warmth from the day. Within caves, faintly lit by glowing moss, there are rivers that run black and silent, carrying whispers of forgotten magic downstream. And in the wide open meadows, where the stars feel close enough to touch, the night creatures gather. Moths with sugar-dusted wings, frogs whose throats glow faintly with bioluminescent light, and soft-bodied worms that write patterns across the ground like glowing script. Each is part of a hidden world, a tapestry that unfolds only under the moon. You are not a predator, nor prey in the ordinary sense. You are something in between, quiet, careful, tuned to the balance of night. You know when to stay still, pressing yourself against stone or bark until danger passes. You know when to move, darting quickly when the forest's hum tells you it is safe. Every movement is part of a rhythm, as if the night itself is guiding your steps. Sometimes you stumble across remnants of day left behind. A half-eaten candy apple from a market in the Candy Kingdom, glowing faintly with crystallized sugar. A scrap of fabric from Finn's backpack, caught on a thorn. A footprint, enormous to you, pressed deep into the mud by Jake's shape-shifting stride. These things remind you that the world of day and the world of night are connected, overlapping, each leaving traces for the other to find. But the most enchanting thing about living in the night of Ooh is the sky. It is different here from this small vantage point. The stars do not simply glitter. They seem alive, pulsing with colors that shift as you watch. Some of them form shapes, constellations that tell the stories of heroes long gone, battles fought, loves lost, and promises kept. And sometimes, when you are very still, you see the faint outline of the cosmic owl gliding silently across the heavens. His wings barely stir the air, yet his presence sends ripples through the night, reminding you that dreams and reality are closer than they seem. Every now and then, the night carries whispers of things much larger than yourself, shadows of ancient beings crossing through Ooh, shapes you cannot fully see but can feel in your bones. The multiverse is wide, and cracks between realms are never far. For a small creature like you, these moments are both terrifying and wondrous. They remind you that the night is not empty. It is full of watchers, wanderers, and guardians, all moving quietly in the dark. And yet, for all its mysteries, the night is not a place of fear for you. It is your home. The cool air carries scents of moss, flowers, and magic. The ground beneath your feet hums faintly, alive with the energy of the land. And the silence, broken only by the symphony of insects and the occasional call of an owl, wraps you in a calm that the day could never offer. In Ooh, night is not just the absence of sunlight. It is a world unto itself, a living, breathing landscape that belongs to those who are awake enough to notice. And as one of its creatures, you are not forgotten or overlooked. You are part of the story, part of the rhythm, a quiet thread woven into the vast and colorful tapestry of Adventure Time's world. As you make your way further through the shadowed landscape, you begin to notice how the land itself changes with the fall of night. The Candy Kingdom, glowing softly into the distance, looks less like a bustling city and more like a cluster of lanterns floating in the dark. The lights shimmer against the surface of the gumdrop plains, casting reflections that ripple like a mirage. To the candy citizens, these lights are protection, comfort against the darkness. But to you, a small creature of the night, the glow is more like a guiding star, a reminder of where warmth and voices gather, even if you never step inside. The tree fort, too, takes on a different form beneath the moonlight. From the ground, where you scuttle or creep or fly, it is not merely a home built into a tree. It is a great fortress, tall as a mountain, branches stretching into the night sky like bridges to the stars. Windows glow faintly with candlelight, casting beams that cut into the darkness. Sometimes you pause there, looking up at the soft flicker of light, wondering what the heroes inside are dreaming. You may never know, but the thought is comforting, like knowing the guardians of the day are resting, so the creatures of the night may roam free. Farther away, the land darkens. The nightosphere sometimes leaks into ooh in ways subtle and strange, a patch of shadow that doesn't match the shape of the trees. A strange smell in the wind, sharp like iron and ash. You keep your distance from these places, knowing instinctively that they are dangerous, and yet curiosity sometimes draws you closer. In those moments, you might glimpse faint red sparks flickering like fireflies, or hear the echo of laughter too deep to belong to anything living. The night in ooh is layered, sweet on its surface, but underneath always threaded with strangeness. The grasslands, where you wander most freely, are like an endless sea under the stars. The wind rolls across them, bending the blades until they sway like waves, carrying with them the scents of sugar, earth, and magic. The ground glitters faintly with minerals that catch the moonlight, so that each step feels like walking across a field of tiny stars. Sometimes larger creatures move here, too, wolves with eyes like molten gold, owls that glide silently overhead, and deer with antlers tipped in glowing moss. You remain small among them, unnoticed most of the time, though always aware of the fragile balance that holds the night together. And then there are the dreams. The night in ooh does not merely cradle sleeping bodies. It creates an entire realm of dreaming that drifts above and within the darkness. As a creature of the night, you sometimes feel these dreams brushing against you, like a soft wind carrying thoughts that are not your own. A candy child dreaming of flying, a wizard dreaming of spells gone wrong, even Finn himself dreaming of battles of loss and of laughter. The dreams pass through you, drifting like clouds, leaving traces of their warmth or sorrow lingering in your fur or feathers or skin. It is as if the night allows you to be a witness to the unspoken lives of those who rest. But dreams are not always gentle. Some nights, darker visions weave themselves into the air, whispers of the lich, faint but chilling, pressing against the edges of the world. The shadow of a crown, heavy with icy sorrow, bleeding into the thoughts of those who once wore it. When those dreams arrive, the night grows colder, the stars dim slightly, and even the insects pause their song. You, small as you are, curl close to the earth, waiting for the weight to pass. In those moments, you are reminded that ooh's night holds both sanctuary and danger, that even the smallest creature feels the ripples of its cosmic forces. Yet for every night that feels heavy, there are others that feel tender, almost playful. Fireflies flicker in patterns that look like constellations, leading you from one patch of grass to the next. Streams of syrup-like water reflect the stars so perfectly that you forget where the sky ends and the river begins. Mushrooms glow softly in clusters, lighting paths like tiny lanterns just for you. Even the breeze seems to laugh sometimes, lifting petals and carrying them across the land in slow, spiraling dances. The night gives you gifts if you know how to see them. A fallen star that lands softly in the grass, no larger than a pebble, warm to the touch. A flower that only blooms once under the full moon, its petals shimmering with a faint, silvery dust. The companionship of other small creatures, gathering silently at the edges of ponds or resting on tree roots, sharing the night with you without the need for words. In these moments, you do not feel small. You feel part of something vast, as though the whole of Ulu is cradling you gently, allowing you to exist within its dream. As the hours pass, the rhythm of the night deepens. The forest hum softens, the wind slow, and the stars tilt in their endless cycle. You begin to feel the pull of stillness, the quiet suggestion that even creatures of the night must rest eventually. You find a hollow, soft moss pressed into a curve of root and settle in. The hum of the land surrounds you, a lullaby woven from grass, water, and stars. And though you remain awake longer than most, even you drift toward sleep eventually, folded into the embrace of Ulu's midnight calm. The night deepens, and as the stars move overhead, you realize that the creatures who share this darkness with you are not only companions, but storytellers of their own kind. Their voices are not like those of candy citizens or human heroes. They tell their stories in patterns, in movement, in rhythm. The crickets sing steady notes, their music rising and falling like the steady breath of the land itself. The frogs add to the chorus, their glowing throats pulsing with sound that seems to thrum through the ground. Even the owls contribute, their haunting calls echoing across valleys, marking the passage of the night as surely as a clock. To you, this is a language. Every sound tells of place and presence, of time and change. You know when predators are near, not because you see them, but because the song of the night shifts. The crickets fall silent. The frogs pause mid-call. The silence is its own story, carrying as much weight as the chorus itself. You have learned to listen closely, to understand the balance between noise and stillness. It is this balance that keeps you alive, guiding your steps through the unseen pathways of the dark. But Ulu is not only a land of natural voices. Magic lingers everywhere, and at night it speaks more boldly. Sometimes you notice strange flickers across the horizon, brief flares of green or blue that shimmer and then vanish. They are not stars, not fireflies, but bursts of residual energy left behind from spells or battles fought long ago. On occasion, the earth itself hums, as though some great sleeping being stirs beneath the surface, reminding you that the world you walk on is not only soil and stone, but memory and power. One night you stumble upon a place you do not recognize. The trees bend unnaturally, curving toward one another until their branches form a canopy so dense that the starlight cannot pierce it. Inside, the air feels heavier, thicker with sweetness that clings to your lungs. The ground glows faintly, streaked with trails of candy-colored fungi that pulse like veins. You hesitate, every instinct warning you to turn back, but curiosity pulls you forward. In the center of this grove, a single pool of water reflects not the branches above, but a sky that does not belong to Ulu. You see swirling galaxies, constellations you have never known, and faint, enormous shapes, drifting as if they are alive. The water ripples though there is no wind, and you feel an ancient presence lingering there, as though the pool is a window into something far older than your small world. You do not understand it, but you feel humbled before it, as though even a tiny creature of the night has been allowed a glimpse into a truth meant for greater beings. You linger only for a moment before retreating, heart racing, paws trembling. Not all mysteries, are meant to be touched. Yet the night does not remain solemn for long. On your return, you cross paths with playful companions, small glowing moths that drift in circles, their wings scattering faint dust that sparkles like stars. They seem to dance for no reason other than joy, spiraling through the air, weaving patterns that could almost be constellations. You follow them for a time, letting their flight lead you through the open fields. It feels as though the night itself is lifting your spirit, reminding you that even amid strange magic and deep shadows, wonder is never far away. There are places in Oo where the night feels almost protective. Meadows where the grass grows tall and soft, muffling sound until all you hear is your own breath. Caves warmed by underground springs where the drip of water becomes a lullaby. Hills that rise just high enough to catch the first touch of moonlight, glowing faintly while the land below remains dark. In these places you rest, knowing that for all the strangeness the night can bring, it also holds corners of peace. And sometimes the night offers glimpses of lives greater than your own. From the shadows you might see Finn and Jake camping by a fire, their laughter drifting across the grasslands. You watch from afar, unseen, their shapes cast in silhouette against the flames. You see the way they lean close, whispering stories, or tilt their heads back to watch the stars. You do not understand their words, but you feel the warmth of their companionship, and it fills you with a quiet comfort. Other times you glimpse Princess Bubblegum moving through her kingdom under cover of darkness, inspecting machines or speaking softly to herself as she works late into the night. You know she is a ruler of immense power, but here she seems almost fragile, lit only by the glow of her laboratory lamps. Even the mighty have their quiet hours, their moments when they are no different from the smallest creatures of Oo. And then there are the rare nights when Simon wanders. He does not wear the crown in those moments, and yet you feel the weight of his sorrow even from your distance. He looks at the stars as though searching for someone long lost, his posture weary, his steps heavy. You watch him for a while, knowing you cannot help, but also knowing that sometimes simply being present is enough. The night holds him gently, just as it holds you, and in that quiet, you share the same shelter. From your small vantage point, these glimpses are fleeting, yet they carry meaning. You are reminded that Oo is woven together not only by its grand adventures and cosmic forces, but by the lives that unfold quietly when no one is watching. The night is the keeper of these moments, and as one of its creatures, you are both witness and participant in its endless story. The hours stretch on, and you feel the pull of dawn beginning at the edges of the sky. But for now, the night still belongs to you. It hums with mystery, with song, with shadow and light in equal measure. You move gently through it, one small life among countless others, but no less important to the rhythm of the world. The night has its own clock, a rhythm marked not by the hands of a watch, but by the steady turning of stars across the heavens. You, small as you are, have learned to sense its hours by feeling rather than seeing. The cool dampness that gathers on the grass means the night is deepening. The hush that falls across the insect's chorus tells you it is nearing its quietest hour. The faint paling at the horizon is the first whisper of dawn. You measure your life in these signs, moving gently within them, guided not by urgency but by trust in the rhythm of Oo itself. It is in the stillest hours, when even the most restless adventurers are asleep, that you feel the night revealing its oldest truths. The land no longer feels busy, no longer shifting between moments of chaos and laughter. Instead, it feels like a memory, as though the whole of Uo is recalling something ancient. You walk across a meadow where the grass is tipped in silver dew, and the air is thick with a silence so deep it feels alive. And then, softly, you hear it. A hum rising from the ground, faint but steady. It is not music exactly, but it carries rhythm, a pulse that reminds you of a heartbeat. Perhaps it is the land remembering the mushroom war, the way it once trembled with destruction. Perhaps it is the echo of magic, seeping from the bones of old spells cast by wizards long gone. Or perhaps it is something simpler, something kinder, the sound of Oo itself breathing, holding all its creatures in a cradle of life. You do not know the truth, but you rest there for a while, letting the hum pass through your tiny frame until you feel like part of it, inseparable from the world around you. Other creatures gather in these quiet hours, too, and you find yourself among them. A group of glowing snails slide slowly across the grass, their shells shimmering with faint patterns that look almost like constellations. A cluster of tiny frogs leap together, each landing in a puddle that reflects a different star, as if the sky has spilled across the earth. Even the foxes, who usually prowl with watchful eyes, soften in this hour, curling into themselves as if surrendering to the night's embrace. It is a communion without words, a gathering of lives drawn together by the stillness. In these moments you realize that the night does not belong to one creature alone. It is not yours, not the owls, not even the stars. It belongs to all who enter it, all who find their place in its calm expanse. The great and the small, the seen and the unseen, the remembered and the forgotten, all are equal here. That is the secret gift of Oo's darkness. It levels the ground, reminding every being that no matter their size or power, they are part of the same quiet whole. Eventually, you notice a shift in the air. The darkness begins to pale at its edges, a softness creeping across the horizon. The stars lose some of their brightness, dimming as though retreating to make room for the sun. The chorus of the night begins to change. The crickets grow quieter, the frogs pause, and the owls drift back to their hollows. Even the magical hum that lingered in the ground fades gently, like a song ending, not with finality, but with rest. For you, dawn is both an ending and a beginning. You retreat toward the hollow you call home, a curl of moss beneath the roots of a gumdrop tree, or a burrow carved into the side of a hill. The air is cooler there, heavy with the sense of night still clinging to the earth. You settle down, curling your body into itself, feeling the soft weight of exhaustion. Yet it is not a weary kind of tired. It is the calm that comes from knowing you have seen the night in its fullness, walked its paths, heard its voices, and shared in its secrets. As you drift toward sleep, the first rays of sunlight break across the land. They fall on the Candy Kingdom, painting its towers with golden light. They spill into the tree fort, warming the wooden walls. They touch the meadows, the forests, the rivers, each awakening slowly from its nighttime slumber. To the day creatures, this is when life begins. To you, this is when life rests, carried into dreams. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of Oo's night, that it does not end when the sun rises. It continues, folded into memory, carried in the breaths of those who lived it. It becomes part of the dreams of candy children, of adventurers, of rulers and wanderers alike. Even you, smallest of night's creatures, carry it within you as you sleep, so that when the next dusk arrives, you are ready once more to step into its quiet embrace. The night in Oo is vast and strange, filled with shadows and wonders, whispers and stars. But it is also tender. It holds every life, no matter how small, in its soft and endless rhythm. And as one of its creatures, you are not forgotten. You are a thread in its tapestry, a note in its song, a part of the great dream that stretches across the land of Oo. And so, as dawn rises and you settle into your rest, the story of the night does not vanish. It lingers in the hum of the earth, in the fading glow of the stars, in the quiet memory of the darkness you called home. The night carries you always, even into the light. The ruins rest quietly at the edge of Oo, their stones softened by moss, their shapes half swallowed by earth and time. Once, perhaps, they were towers or halls or something even grander, but now they stand as shadows of memory, leaning and broken beneath the wide sky. Few travelers come here, for there is nothing to conquer, no treasure to claim. Only silence lingers, and silence does not draw the loud-hearted. But there is someone who stays, a watcher. Not a ruler, not a hero, not even a protector, in the way the kingdoms know the word. More like a witness, one who sits among the stones as days and nights slide past, keeping company with what remains. The silent watcher does not seek glory. They simply endure, their form blending into the ruins so fully that you might mistake them for part of the broken walls if you were not looking carefully enough. From the watcher's place, the world unfolds in slow rhythm. The Candy Kingdom's towers glow faint in the distance, their lights carrying laughter across the night. Beyond them, forests sway in green tides, rivers shimmer like spilled silver, and far-off mountains guard the horizon like ancient sentinels. The watcher sees it all without moving, without calling attention, their stillness deeper than the roots of the trees. They listen more than they look, to the rustle of the wind threading through broken archways, to the low hum of insects weaving patterns across the air, to the quiet groan of stone settling into the soil, as though the ruins themselves are exhaling after centuries of holding their place. Each sound is small, yet together they form a chorus of existence. The watcher is not lonely in this company. Sometimes, though, silence reveals what others miss. Travelers cross the grasslands thinking only of their destination, yet the watcher hears their laughter long before their figures appear. Adventurers duel monsters, their shouts carried on the wind. But the watcher also hears the softer thing, the whimper of a wounded beast, the gentle clink of armor set down after battle. It is not just what happens, but what follows, the echoes left behind, that fill the watcher's nights. The ruins hold echoes, too. Every fallen wall whispers of hands that built it. Every cracked stone recalls voices that filled its halls. The watcher does not know their names, yet still feels their presence, like a candle that burned long ago but left its smoke lingering. In their stillness, they imagine those forgotten lives, children playing in a courtyard that is now only rubble, families sharing meals where moss now spreads, scholars speaking beneath arches that now frame only sky. The watcher does not need certainty. The imagining itself is enough to keep memory alive. When the stars rise, the ruins transform. Their edges sharpen against the dark, and their shadows stretch into strange shapes that seem almost alive. Some might find this eerie, but to the watcher, it is a kind of conversation. The night paints new faces on the stones each evening, reminding them that even the broken can shift into something beautiful. The watcher, in their silence, bears witness to this nightly rebirth. There are nights when others pass through, a wandering bard who strums their lute beneath the collapsed arch, a lost child chasing fireflies, pausing in wonder at the stone carving still etched faintly into a wall. Even Finn and Jake once passed by, chasing some beast into the fields, their laughter bright and loud before fading into the distance. None of them stayed. None of them noticed the Watcher seated so quietly among the ruins. But that does not trouble them. The Watcher's task is not to be seen. It is to see. And so the silent Watcher remains, rooted as firmly as the stones themselves, listening as Oo breathes, watching as its days rise and its nights fall, carrying the stories of the ruins in silence. The Watcher has seen seasons turn more times than they can recall. To them, 100 years is as a breath, and yet each passing of the sun and moon carries its own gentle weight. In the warmth of spring, vines creep eagerly over broken stone, their tendrils curling into cracks like children rediscovering a long-forgotten toy. Birds make their nests in what once were windows, weaving twigs where glass once shone. Spring smells of rain-soaked earth and sweet blossoms, filling the Watcher's lungs with quiet renewal. Summer, too, changes the ruins. The sun beats upon the cracked stones, warming them until they glow faintly at dusk, holding onto heat like treasured memory. The grasses grow tall and golden around the fallen walls, hiding them as though the earth wishes to gently cover what time has worn down. Insects hum in endless patterns, circling the ruins like tiny guardians who never leave their post. For the Watcher, these sounds are lullabies. Autumn comes with gentler steps. Leaves whirl through the arches, scattering themselves across the stones in spirals of red and gold. The Watcher has always admired how trees seem unafraid to let go of what is no longer needed, leaving the earth painted in color before retreating into sleep. Sometimes the Watcher wonders if the ruins themselves are in a similar state, an endless autumn of being, always releasing, always remembering. Then winter arrives heavy and still. Snow softens every broken line of the ruins, as if kindness itself had fallen from the sky to protect what remains. Icicles hang like glass ornaments from fractured ceilings, shimmering when the moonlight catches them. For a time, the ruins resemble a palace again, glittering and strange, though silent and without inhabitants. The Watcher feels no chill, only the comfort of stillness, as though the world itself has joined them in silence. Through these seasons, the Watcher observes not only nature, but the shifting moods of Oo itself. They know the rhythm of kingdoms rising and falling, as steady as the cycle of the moon. Armies once marched past, their banners bright against the sky. Yet years later, the same path became a meadow of daisies where children played, unaware of the battles once fought upon that ground. Even the heroes of Oo, for all their greatness, move swiftly in the Watcher's eyes. They come like comets, flashing across the ruins for only a moment before vanishing beyond the horizon. Finn's laughter once echoed here, bouncing between the stones like a song. Marceline's voice drifted overhead, her melodies turning broken towers into concert halls of the night. And yet they did not stay. The Watcher remembers them as one remembers dreams, bright, fleeting, and gone upon waking. There is something gentle in that transience. The Watcher has no need to hold heroes in place. Their role is not to bind the story, but to cradle it briefly, then let it pass. They have seen countless lives rise, shine, and fade. The small creatures nesting in the walls, the wandering adventurers pausing only for a night, even the mighty kings and queens who once built their empires not far from here. All of them became part of the Watcher's long memory, and in remembering, the Watcher honors them. The ruins themselves seem to join in that remembrance. On certain nights, when the wind is just right, the Watcher hears faint voices carried through the archways. Not words, not truly, but murmurs, like the echo of songs long forgotten. Perhaps it is only the air playing tricks, or perhaps the stones still hold a memory of the people who once touched them. The watcher does not question. They simply listen, adding those echoes to the quiet tapestry they hold within. Even silence speaks if one is patient enough. The watcher has learned to hear the language of absence, the stillness after a bird has flown, the hollow quiet left when fire fades to ash, the pause between heartbeats of the land. These are not empty sounds. They are proof that time itself is breathing, and the watcher, in their endless patience, breathes along with it. The watcher has seen scars upon that even the seasons cannot fully heal. Beyond the soft moss and wildflowers, there are marks in the earth that run deeper, too vast to be erased by wind or rain. Some of the ruins themselves are not just remnants of kingdoms, but echoes of the Mushroom War, that ancient cataclysm whose shadow still lingers over the land. Sometimes in the hush of twilight, the watcher gazes upon the broken silhouettes around them and imagines what came before. Towering structures of metal and glass, machines that hummed with human invention, roads alive with voices and movement. Now all that remains are fragments, jagged slabs of concrete half swallowed by earth, twisted beams of steel jutting out like bones. To most who wander past, they are only hazards or curiosities, but to the watcher, they are pages in a vast, unfinished book. And just as the ruins whisper of human hands, they also speak of what followed. Magic grew from the ashes of technology, seeping into every corner of the land. The watcher remembers when strange new creatures first appeared, born from the mingling of radiation and enchantment. They crept cautiously through the ruins, sniffing at stones, nesting in broken chambers. Over centuries, they became part of the rhythm, just as natural as birdsong or rainfall. The watcher has never judged these new arrivals. To them, life is life, and all of it deserves to be witnessed. The watcher has also seen rulers rise and fade like candle flame. There was once a warlord who marched across the plains, his banners snapping above the ruins. He claimed the stones as his fortress, shouting that he would rebuild the world from here. Yet the watcher knew even then how brief his fire would burn. Within a few years his army had dissolved, and the grass reclaimed the path of his footsteps. The ruins did not bow to him. They simply endured, patient as ever. Then came others, wanderers who sought treasure, sorcerers who sought knowledge, lovers who carved their initials into the weathered walls. Each left a mark, some deeper than others, but none lasting. For every new hand that tries to claim the ruins, time gently takes it back, folding it into the larger memory. The watcher sees this with quiet acceptance. It is not cruelty. It is the way of things. There are nights when the watcher wonders about the humans who once built these places. Were they dreamers, seeking permanence in stone and steel? Did they believe their walls would hold against time? If so, the ruins themselves are proof of a different truth, that nothing stands forever. And yet, there is beauty in that impermanence. The watcher sees it in the ivy curling through cracks, in the wildflowers painting over broken concrete, in the children of who sometimes stumble upon these ruins and play among them without fear. Life always finds its way into the gaps. Finn himself once lingered here. He was younger then, still carrying the eager energy of a boy who believed every ruin hid a secret waiting to be discovered. He ran his hands across the stones, tracing carvings too worn to read. To him they were puzzles, mysteries begging for answers. To the watcher, they were simply echoes, unhurried and eternal. Finn left quickly, pulled onward by the urgency of youth. But for the watcher, his presence joined the long chain of memories, one more bright flicker in their endless vigil. Sometimes, When the moonlight catches the ruins in just the right way, the watcher sees faces where there should be none, shapes formed by shadows, patterns etched in cracks. They know these are tricks of the eye, yet they accept them as visitors all the same. Perhaps they are the ghosts of those who once lived here, or perhaps they are only the watcher's own imagination, weaving stories to keep the silence company. Either way, they smile inwardly, for the ruins are never truly empty. There is a strange comfort in knowing that, even in destruction, something remains. The ruins may no longer serve their builders, but they serve memory. And memory, the watcher knows, is as vital as breath. Without it, the world would forget itself, drifting into nothingness. The watcher cannot stop time, cannot rebuild what was lost, but they can remember, and in remembering, they keep Oo's story whole. Every so often, the watcher sees a young creature, a fox, a rabbit, even a tiny snail, pausing at the ruins as though listening to something deeper. The watcher wonders if they too can feel it, that soft hum of history vibrating through the stones. The young ones do not stay long. They scurry off into the grass, back into the flow of their short lives. But for a moment, they too have touched the memory. The watcher treasures those moments, proof that the ruins still speak, if only one is patient enough to hear. The watcher's silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the steady gaze of one who understands that even the smallest detail, a broken carving, a bird nesting in a hollow, the way sunlight bends through a shattered wall, has meaning. To hold such details, to give them space, is to honor the story of Oo itself. And so they remain, unmoving, unneeded by others, yet essential in their own quiet way. The watcher often wonders about the future, though not in the same hurried way that kings and heroes do. They do not ask what kingdom will rise next, or who will claim the crown, or whether the world will know peace or turmoil. To the watcher, the future is simply another thread in the tapestry of time, already woven into place, waiting to be revealed. Still, as they gaze across the grasslands, they sometimes imagine how the ruins will look in 100 years or 1,000. Will the stones crumble completely into soil, returning to the earth from which they came? Will trees grow through the last fragments, their roots splitting walls until they are indistinguishable from the forest around them? Or will some new being come to claim these places, building atop the bones of what came before? The watcher does not know, but they are content to wonder. The watcher has seen enough to understand that Oo itself is always shifting. From the ashes of the Mushroom War, life took shapes no one could have predicted. From broken cities rose kingdoms of candy, of fire, of ice. From quiet plains rose adventurers whose laughter and courage carried across the land. There is no end, only transformation. And so the watcher believes that when these ruins at last vanish, their memory will not be lost, but will live on in some new form, carried in roots, in rivers, in the very air. For the watcher, eternity is not about permanence, it is about patience. It is about being present long enough to see how the world renews itself again and again, no matter how much is broken. Heroes may falter, kingdoms may fall, and even stars may burn out, but the rhythm of life continues, soft and unstoppable. To the watcher, this is not sad. It is beautiful. In the quietest hours of the night, when moonlight turns the ruins silver, the watcher closes their eyes and listens. The wind moving through the stones becomes the laughter of those who once walked here. The hum of insects becomes the echo of music once played in forgotten halls. The trickle of water through cracks becomes the murmur of voices once gathered in these rooms. For a moment, the ruins are alive again, not as they once were, but as memory woven seamlessly into the present. The watcher breathes it in, content. They have no need to be known, no need for songs sung in their honor. Their gift is silence, and in silence they have discovered truths that others overlook, that every small sound matters, that every stone tells a story, that every being, no matter how small or brief, leaves an imprint upon the world. Perhaps one day even the watcher will fade. Perhaps their stillness will return to the earth, their memory dissolving into soil, their form lost among the ruins they cherished. And yet even then, the silence will remain. Someone else will take up the listening. Perhaps another creature, humble and small, will pause here and feel the hum of history in the stones. Perhaps they will sit as the watcher once did, breathing with the land, carrying memory forward into the endless rhythm of ooh. The watcher smiles, though no one sees, for they know that memory is never truly lost. It changes form, just as the ruins themselves have changed, just as ooh has changed since the first sparks of life lit its soil. And so they continue their vigil, steady and unbroken, a quiet thread woven into the great tapestry of existence. The night deepens, and the stars wheel slowly across the sky. The ruins glow faintly in their silver light, the stones resting like old friends around the watcher's form. Insects hum a gentle lullaby. The grasses sway as though bowing to the unseen rhythm of the earth. And still the watcher sits, silent and present, the patient keeper of stories, the quiet guardian of memory. And now, dear listener, as the watcher rests in their endless stillness, perhaps it is time for you to rest as well. Let the silence of the ruins wrap around you. Let the soft hum of memory settle in your chest. And let the gentle rhythm of ooh's heartbeat guide you into dreams. Good night.